Even though I create all of the content on this YouTube channel and I do like what I make here, I have to accept that, hey, this is not the be-all and end-all stop to learn about game development. Because at the end of the day, I'm still just some guy who is sitting on his couch right now and talking to you about game development, but I haven't fully made it yet. But there's a lot of things you can learn from people who have actually made it. I would say almost even more than from this YouTube channel. And where do you find those people and like their lessons that they've learned? There's one great place for it, and it's called GDC Talks. They're free, they're like very long, like either half an hour or an hour of in-depth talks, and it's hosted by people who are like experts in their small little domain, whether that is indie game business, or that's marketing, or that's sound design, or whatever other thing basically. There are people at it who are like at the top of their field, and there's content about it for free. So this video is going to be a bit of a primer on how do these GDC talks work, and I'm going to give you 3 of my personal favorite talks that I've learned the most from, and the exact lessons that I have implemented for our own studio and our own games after having watched these talks. Now, before I dive into the exact GDC talks, I do quickly want to talk about how should you watch those GDC talks, because I don't think you should just put it on as second monitor content. Maybe you do that with my videos and that's fine, but if you're looking at something like those GDC talks that are like half an hour or an hour long, in my opinion, treat them as like actual school lectures. That's how I do it. I just, for an hour long, put on the video. Don't read the comments or whatever, look at other stuff, look on your phone. Treat it as an actual school lecture that you're paying money for, because that is the quality that you're getting often from those talks. And take notes along the way as well. Don't just listen to it and then once the talk is over, forget it. What I do is I take notes, and then at the end of every notes section, I also have an actionable step where I take some of the lessons from the talk and I think to myself, okay, what is something actionable I can do like now or like in the next few days at most to make my own game or make my own studio or whatever better. And the first talk that I really learned a lot from, and I think it is also just the most helpful for smaller indies out of these 3 talks, is marketing on zero budget. Probably the biggest question you guys ask me as well is like, I have 100 wish lists. God help me, I'm gonna release in a week. What should I do? And this talk basically goes about some of the steps you can take when you want to market your game. You have no ad spend or you can't do like a big influencer campaign, and it talks about like some general marketing principles, such as how to get a good hook for your game so you can just like talk to people about it and get them interested. And then also about some other marketing strategies, such as things like Discord servers, reaching out to people, and the fact that at the end of the day, it's all just a numbers game. There are 2 main things that we took away from this video and that I like immediately implemented. The first one was, and I've talked about this before in other videos as well, is creating that big list of influencers. If you haven't seen our previous video where we really talk about influencer marketing and how you can do that on zero budget, take a look at it. But basically, you're going to create a list of over 100 YouTubers or like other influencers ideally who play similar games to yours, and you're like, okay, my own game is going to be a good fit for their YouTube channel, and you're going to collect all of their email addresses, and then once you're getting like 2 or 3 weeks out from release, you're going to send emails to all of them, including your game key, including information about your game, like press kits and whatever, so that they can cover your game for free, because they have such a good reach, and because if you can target a good niche audience, you can get hundreds of wish lists from a single influencer, which may be more than like all of your previous marketing campaigns up until that point. And then the second big takeaway that I got from watching this GDC talk was Discord servers. I think they're kind of a complicated thing because they're very easy to make. So I know a lot of you guys have a Discord server and there's like 20 people in it and like 15 of them are like your friends or other game developers. And I think it's kind of a hard thing to, when do you exactly make that Discord server? Because we all know those Discord servers as well, where, you know, you join it, but then turns out that the last message posted in it was like half a year ago, and well, you're not really gonna say anything then. It's like a purely dead Discord server. There's no benefit for you, the developer, to have one of those Discord servers. But where a Discord server shines is that once you have like an audience in your Discord server and your game releases, you can guarantee basically those 10 reviews, which is like the magical threshold for Steam to start recommending your game to other people, because a Discord server is a much closer community than, for example, someone who just saw like your announcement trailer like 4 months ago and then just moved on and started playing other games and kind of forgot about your game. Whereas if you have them in your Discord server, they can like directly interact with you and get more of a bond, follow the development more. Once you do release your game, you can be like, hey, everyone, go and buy this game, give us some reviews, please. And having that momentum to get those 10 reviews as fast as possible is really important there. So once I saw this video, we created our own Discord server, even though back then I think we had like 150 or so people in it. One thing you need to keep in mind with Discord servers, if you want to prevent them being like absolutely dead, is you need to have a playable version of your game, whether that's a demo or a prologue or whatever, a playtest. People need to be able to do something. They can't just sit in there and like you use the Discord server as like a read-only announcement channel basically, where once every week or something you post like a GIF of this is some progress I've made on your game. That's how you're going to get one of those dead games. You need to have that demo or like other build basically, so other people in your Discord server can start making like user-generated content. Basically, they can do bug reports, they can talk about some own things that they've made. Only once you've done that will you avoid having those dead Discord servers. And then the second GDC talk that I really learned an immense amount of is intensely practical tips on growing your indie studio. Because up until I entered the indie game YouTube scene, basically, I feel like there was no other YouTube channel that really vibed with me of, you know, I'm not a solo dev, I'm not a two-person dev, we were 4 people already. And there's just not that many people out there who already have a bit of that business mindset. Because if you're a solo dev, you don't need to care about most of those things. You just need to make sure you have a game and you can sell it at some point. And that's like all of the business you really need. But if you're working with multiple people, there are going to be more complexities. There's going to be more things that you need to take care about, and you probably also have more of a pressure to start earning money and paying out wages, for example, down the line. And this GDC talk was the first good talk, in my opinion, that showed me that, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's this quote I really like that's like, it's all fun and games until you have to make a fun game that also just earns you money. Then suddenly it becomes a completely different story, and things aren't always going to be great in your own like indie studio startup basically. This talk really dives well into that. And the first actionable thing of that GDC talk basically is the current vision of this YouTube channel, like the content we make, the mindset behind all of the topics we cover, where, you know, I want to give you that glasshouse approach of just showing you everything that's going on. Even though our games are failing horribly and we're barely making any progress, I still think that, you know, this is the reality, whether you like it or not. And that is the vision that this video instilled upon me that I want to instill down upon you as well. That was the first actionable thing. Before then, our YouTube channel, you know, it was a mix of devlogs and like other random stuff, but there wasn't really a clear direction. This GDC talk gave me that direction. And then what this GDC talk also taught me a lot about is, you know, working in teams, because that is what we're doing. I am not a manager. I am not meant for that. Hell, I'm 23. What am I supposed to know about dealing with other people? But if you're running a studio, once again, that is not just like you or you and one other person, these things get more difficult and more important, because then you also need to think about, okay, who has responsibility for certain things? Maybe nobody knows who's the final responsible person for a certain mechanic, and then just the mechanic doesn't really end up being made well, or nobody is happy with it because nobody wanted to claim responsibility for that. That is something where I'm now more of like, hey, I don't care who. Either I take it or someone else in our team takes it, but someone is taking the responsibility and they're like the owner of the mechanic or of the visuals or whatever. And they take that responsibility, but it also means we have a clearer vision of the end product instead of all just piling on suggestions, but nobody really being there to really guard it and turn it into a cohesive mechanic, for example. And then there's also some things that, you know, are not the sexy part of game development, where you have to do one-on-ones, for example, very important. Or you just have to talk to people in your team of like, hey, are you still happy with the stuff we're doing here? Is there something I can do that makes your life better? That's not just, oh, give me more money, because that's not realistic with our current earnings. Those are things that I learned from that talk as well, of like, how do I try to be like a good, like not boss really, but how am I a good person and I can manage the rest of the team so they like what they're doing here as well. That is so important, because game development, it's a long-term process. Like releasing your first game, even if you're with multiple people, it can often take over a year. And I don't know if you noticed, but a year is a long time for someone to work with you on a group project. Like probably there was a point in like your game dev career where you started game development with like a friend or some other random guy you found on Discord. But after like a month, they're like, yeah, I'm gonna bounce now. It's been a good ride, but I'm out because we're not making enough progress or whatever. That is the problem with game development. It just takes a long time, so you have to be certain that you can also just sustain that like interpersonal relationship with your colleagues down the road as well. And this talk is really good at explaining that as well. And then this last one is a bit more technical, so maybe not applicable to everyone, but I think for us specifically, it was still very valuable. And it's the talk, where the fuck are your tests, basically? Because everyone in our team has like a software development background. So we know like, oh, unit tests and like all of the different kinds of tests for traditional applications. But games are not traditional applications at the end of the day, because there's so much user input, there's so many different things you can do. It gets more difficult on making sure, how do I test my game? And with testing, I don't mean like physically having to play the game like every time you do a feature, because that's not scalable, but more of how do I automate all of this? We had the basics of unit testing, but for game development, it gets more difficult with things like play mode testing, or you want to test like full-on mechanics. How do you do that in a correct way? Because especially for us, having working builds is very important, because I need to pull up like some more recent footage of the games we're making, like Guild Architect. The footage that I put up like right now on the screen probably, that is footage from our master branch that I just now recorded basically, because I want to always have a working branch. You don't ever want to regress on, oh, my branch used to work a week ago and now I'm adding this new feature and everything is broken. You don't want that, because it's going to be soul sucking. So doing those tests is important. This is also what caused us to make like a CI/CD pipeline using TeamCity. It's like kind of complicated. It's not for this video, but there are multiple ways to look into pipelines. And once again, for teams, it's very important, because nobody technically on our team should now be able to push code that would cause the game to break, because we have tests for all of these things. Now, if you're making a simple 2D platformer and you're a solo dev, like probably unit tests don't matter as much for you, but we were making Forge Industry, which was like very complex mechanically with so many moving parts that you simply couldn't manually test it anymore. We had like 700 items. At that point, you need to do like combinations, and that is something where, you know, unit tests are the way to go, or like play mode tests and whatever. And then one other tip that I learned from this talk, and I mean, it's probably like a unit test common knowledge. I don't know, maybe you're like a software engineer listening to this and you're like, oh my God, this is so dumb. How did you not know that? Where if you're doing something and you're unit testing it, if you're doing a manual test, you probably just test it like once if it works. But doing a unit test, why would you only test once? Why not like immediately go for a stress test and test everything like 100,000 times? Because these unit tests, they often take like milliseconds to run. So running something like 1,000, 10,000 or 100,000 times can also catch a bunch of like edge cases, for example, where there's maybe a combination of items that doesn't fully work, or where there's something else that goes wrong in terms of like generation. Just increasing the scale of your unit tests is probably already going to be a great improvement in just weeding out some random like edge case bugs. So those were 3 talks that I personally really enjoyed and learned a lot of. There's a bunch more. I'll actually link my personal like unlisted playlist with some other GDC talks that I really enjoyed down below as well, if you're interested in that. Apart from that, I'm interested about you as well. What are some GDC talks that you really enjoyed as well, that you got a lot of value of? And what were the few key takeaways that you got from those GDC talks as well? I'm really interested about that, and maybe someone else who's reading the comments can also learn from it, because these are only like 3 talks. There are like literally thousands of them on the GDC YouTube channel. So by posting your comment, you're probably going to be helping out a few hundred other game developers who are like reading through the comments as well. I hope this was still valuable for you. I think GDC talks are really important to look at and to learn from, in my opinion. So really don't sleep on them. Watch them as well, and not just listen to them on like second monitor, but actually watch and take notes. That's so important. Apart from that, if you're new here, we're game developers. We make 2 videos every week talking about the entire game development process, things we learn along the way, and just the games industry in general. So if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to head down below and subscribe, as it's a win-win for both of us. I get your subscription and you get these videos delivered to your inbox 2 times a week. That's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!